Black chef greeted Korean mafia boss's dad. Her Busan dialect greeting had every guest frozen. The entire room went silent. Lee Sung-ho, the most feared Korean mafia boss on the East Coast, had just watched his elderly father freeze mid-step. All because of her. All because of Maya. The black chef everyone overlooked, everyone ignored, everyone dismissed, until she opened her mouth and spoke in a Busan dialect so pure, so authentic, it transported the old man back to the streets of his youth. Before we continue on how everything started, kindly subscribe, like and drop a comment to support my YouTube channel so you can get more amazing stories like this. They thought she was nothing. They thought she was invisible. They were wrong. The luxury hotel's gleaming marble lobby might as well have been a battlefield. Designer suits and diamond watches couldn't hide what these men truly were. Killers, smugglers, extortionists. The Lee family didn't build their empire on kindness. They built it on blood. And now the patriarch, Old Man Lee, had finally emerged from Korea to inspect his son's American operations, bringing with him expectations heavy enough to crush steel. Maya Chen knew the weight of expectations. At 27, she'd spent a lifetime being underestimated. Too black for Korea, too Korean for America. A woman caught between worlds, belonging fully to neither. The hotel management had given strict instructions. Stay in the kitchen. Stay silent. Be nothing. Just another black face in a chef's uniform. Just another woman to be ignored. Keep your head down. Don't make eye contact. Speak only when spoken to. The irony wasn't lost on her. These were the same instructions her foster mother had drilled into her on the streets of Busan when she was 8 years old. The same rules for survival. The staff meeting that morning had been a masterclass in fear. Mr. Cho, the hotel manager, had sweated through his silk shirt as he paced before his assembled staff. The Lee family owns half of Busan and a growing piece of New York. They don't stay at hotels, they buy them. They don't visit cities, they consume them. Today they honor us with their presence. Any mistake, any disrespect, any hint of poor service, and your employment won't be the only thing terminated. Am I understood? Maya had stood at the back, silent, watching, always listening. The other staff avoided her gaze. The Korean staff especially kept their distance. The black woman who spoke their language too well made them uncomfortable. She was an anomaly they couldn't categorize, couldn't understand. Their whispers followed her through the service corridors. The Lee's arrival transformed the hotel into a fortress. Security men with earpieces and bulges under their tailored jackets positioned themselves at every entrance. The regular guests were cleared out. The restaurant closed to the public. Maya moved silently through the kitchen preparations, prepping ingredients, testing temperatures, making everything perfect. Her hands didn't shake. They never shook anymore. Not since that night in Busan 10 years ago when everything burned. She was assigned to the main kitchen, away from the Lee's private dining room, away from danger, away from recognition. Mr. Cho had made sure of that. You stay back here, he'd snapped at her. No contact with guests. If they see you, he didn't finish the thought. He didn't have to. But fate has a way of mocking our best precautions. The head chef collapsed with chest pains. A last-minute demand for authentic Busan-style banchan. And suddenly, Maya was being rushed into the VIP dining corridor, carrying a tray of perfectly arranged small dishes, head down, praying to remain unseen. The dining room doors opened. Maya stepped through directly into Old Man Lee's line of sight. Time slowed to a crawl. He was smaller than she expected. Frailer. His designer suit hung on shoulders that once commanded respect through fear alone. His cane, dragon-headed, gold-tipped, wasn't just for show anymore. But his eyes were unchanged. Cold, calculating, seeing everything. He saw her. Really saw her. Maya set the tray down with reflexes honed through years of survival. The old man's security detail shifted, hands moving toward weapons that weren't supposed to exist on American soil. I apologize for the interruption, sir, Maya said automatically in English. Her voice deliberately soft, submissive, expected. But Old Man Lee didn't move. He stared at her, his head tilted slightly, his eyes narrowing as if trying to place a half-forgotten melody. You are not Korean, he stated in English so heavily accented it was barely recognizable. No, sir, Maya replied, eyes downcast, playing her role perfectly. Then why do you prepare our food? He switched to Korean, the words sharp, testing. Something in his tone, in the particular rhythm of his question, triggered a memory buried so deep, Maya thought she'd finally killed it. A rainy afternoon in a small apartment, her foster mother teaching her the proper way to address elders, the proper way to show respect, the proper way to survive. Without thinking, Maya responded in perfect Busan dialect. Her accent so authentic it could have come from the fish markets near Jigalchi. To serve with honor is to find honor in serving, respected elder. The traditional saying flowed from her lips before she could stop it. The dining room went silent. Deathly silent. The kind of silence that precedes violence. Old Man Lee's cane froze mid-tap against the marble floor. His security detail exchanged glances of confusion, then alarm. And from behind the old man emerged his son, Sung-ho Lee, the dragon of New York, the businessman with bloody hands, the heir to an empire built on broken bones. What is happening here? Sung-ho demanded in English, his voice cultured, American educated, but with an undercurrent of steel. Maya kept her eyes down, cursing herself silently. One mistake. One moment of forgotten caution. She'd survived for 10 years by being invisible. And in an instant of unthinking response, she'd painted a target on her back. The old man ignored his son. He stepped closer to Maya, the tap of his cane echoing in the silence. Look at me, he commanded in Korean. Maya raised her eyes slowly, carefully keeping her face neutral, unreadable, the mask she'd perfected through years of necessity. Where did you learn to speak like that? Old Man Lee asked, still in Korean, his voice softer now, curious rather than threatening. I grew up in Busan, sir. Maya answered truthfully but incompletely. The old man's eyebrows rose. A black child in Busan? When? From age 8 to 17, sir. A flash of something, recognition, suspicion, crossed the old man's weathered face. Your name? Maya Chen, sir. No. He waved his hand dismissively. Your Korean name. The question hit her like a physical blow. No one had called her by that name in a decade. She'd buried it alongside the memories of flames consuming the only home she'd known, alongside the faces of the family who'd taken in an abandoned black child when no one else would. Park Hana, she said, the name feeling both foreign and achingly familiar on her tongue. And there it was. The flash of absolute recognition in the old man's eyes. The slight parting of his lips. The sharp intake of breath from Sung-ho, who had stepped closer, his attention now fully fixed on the black chef with a Korean name and a Busan accent that even he, with his American education, couldn't perfectly replicate. Park, Sung-ho repeated, the single syllable loaded with implication. Old Man Lee raised his hand, silencing his son without looking at him. Hana, he repeated, testing the name. The daughter of Park Tae-minute. Maya's hands nearly dropped the tray she was still holding. No one had spoken her foster father's name to her in 10 years. No one in America knew that name, knew that connection, knew what it meant. Yes, sir, she whispered. The old man nodded once, decisively. You will prepare our meal tonight. Only you. It wasn't a request. If you're wondering how a black orphan ended up in Busan with a Korean name and the dialect of a native, you're asking the same question that burned in Sung-ho Lee's eyes as he watched Maya work in the private kitchen attached to their dining room that evening. He stood in the doorway, dismissing the security that normally shadowed him, watching her prepare banchan with the precision of someone who'd done this countless times before. Her knife work was immaculate, each cut identical, each movement efficient. You handle those like you were born to it, he observed in English, his voice deceptively casual. I was trained well, sir, Maya replied, keeping her focus on the task, maintaining the practiced deference that had kept her alive in two different worlds. By Park Tae-minute, Sung-ho said, the name a deliberate provocation. Maya's hands didn't falter as she arranged the kim kai. Yes, sir. You know who he was to my father? It wasn't a question, so Maya didn't answer. Of course she knew. Everyone in Busan's underworld knew that Park Tae-minute had once been Old Man Lee's right hand, his most trusted lieutenant, his blood brother in all but actual relation, until the night everything changed. My father thinks you're a ghost, Sung-ho continued, stepping into the kitchen, closing the distance between them. A message from the past. I'm just a chef, sir, Maya said, the lie bitter on her tongue. Sung-ho laughed, the sound devoid of humor. A chef who speaks Busan dialect better than I do. A chef with the name Park. A chef who knows exactly how to prepare a traditional table for the elder of a Korean crime family. He was close enough now that she could smell his cologne. Expensive and subtle. Who are you really, Maya Chen? Or should I call you Hana? The sound of her Korean name in his mouth sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. Maya is fine, sir. And I'm exactly what I appear to be. Someone trying to survive. Something in her tone made him pause. For a moment, the calculated intimidation faltered, and he really looked at her. Not as a potential threat or an anomaly, but as a human being with a story written in the careful way she held herself, in the watchfulness of her eyes, in the deliberate control of every movement. "How did you end up in Busan?" he asked, his voice different now. "Actually curious. American missionary couple abandoned me there when I was 8. They decided a black child was too difficult to explain to their congregation back home. The truth slipped out before she could package it more palatably. Your father's friend found me sleeping in a shipping container at the docks. Instead of calling the police, he took me home." Sung-ho's expression shifted. Surprise breaking through his controlled facade. Time in it took in a black child off the streets. The same man who once hung a rival from a cargo crane for disrespect. "People contain multitudes, Mr. Lee," Maya replied, meeting his gaze directly for the first time. "Even criminals." Something unreadable flashed in Sung-ho's eyes. "Even chefs who speak like gangsters' daughters." The confrontation might have escalated if old man Lee hadn't chosen that moment to enter the private kitchen. His security detail creating a perimeter before melting into the background. The old man assessed the preparation with approval before gesturing toward the dining room. "Come, Sung-ho," he commanded in Korean. "Hana will serve us." And so began the most dangerous dinner of Maya's life. Course after course, she moved with practiced grace, presenting each dish with the proper respect, refilling drinks before they were empty, anticipating needs before they were voiced. All while aware of Sung-ho's unwavering attention, his eyes following her every movement, searching for flaws, for hints, for confirmation of whatever suspicion had taken root in his mind. The conversation remained in Korean, shifting between business discussions and reminiscences of Busan. The old man seemed to take pleasure in watching Maya respond to his native tongue, occasionally addressing questions directly to her about particular neighborhoods or landmarks, testing the depth of her knowledge. Sung-ho watched this bizarre interaction with growing tension, his jaw tightening each time Maya demonstrated another layer of authenticity that couldn't be faked, couldn't be learned from books or language apps. It might have continued that way, this strange dance of testing and proving, if fate hadn't intervened again. This time with the distinctive sound of silenced gunshots from the corridor outside. If you've never heard a suppressed gunshot in person, you might mistake it for something innocuous. A book dropping. A door closing too firmly. But Maya knew that sound intimately. It had been the soundtrack to her final night in Busan, the prelude to flames and screaming and loss. Her body reacted before her mind could process. She dropped the serving dish, lunged across the table, and tackled old man Lee from his chair just as the window behind him exploded inward. Where his head had been a second earlier, the wall now displayed a perfect bullet hole. The room erupted into chaos. Security guards burst through the door, weapons drawn. Sung-ho flipped the heavy table onto its side for cover, shouting orders in a mix of Korean and English. But Maya remained focused solely on the vulnerable old man beneath her, shielding his body with her own as she dragged him behind the minimal protection of an overturned chair. "Stay down," she commanded in Busan dialect, her tone leaving no room for argument, even from a man unaccustomed to taking orders. Old man Lee stared up at her with wide eyes, the decade seeming to fall away as recognition bloomed fully on his face. "You move like him," he whispered. There was no time to acknowledge what they both knew, that Park Tae-minute had trained his adopted daughter as thoroughly as he trained his men. Instead, Maya scanned the room, assessing threats and exits with practiced efficiency. "The kitchen," she said to Sung-ho, who had pressed himself against the wall beside the shattered window, gun in hand. "Service elevator to the garage. They'll have the main exits covered." Sung-ho stared at her, conflict evident in his expression. The instinct to protect his father warring with suspicion of the chef who had just saved the old man's life and was now issuing tactical retreats like a seasoned soldier. "Trust me or die here," Maya said bluntly, reverting to English. "Your choice." Another bullet splintered the wooden chair beside them, making the decision for him. "Lead the way," Sung-ho ordered, moving to his father's side. "I'm right behind you." What followed was a harrowing escape through service corridors and back stairwells, routes Maya knew intimately from months of invisible labor. She moved with a fighter's grace now, all pretense of subservience abandoned as she guided the Lees through the hotel's hidden arteries, evading the gunmen who had infiltrated multiple floors. When they encountered an armed man by the service elevator, Maya didn't hesitate. She disarmed him with a fluid combination of movements that spoke of years of training, rendering him unconscious with brutal efficiency before Sung-ho could even raise his weapon. "Who taught you to fight like that?" Sung-ho demanded as the elevator doors closed, sealing them momentarily in safety. "The same person who taught me to speak like this," Maya replied, checking the old man for injuries. "Your father's best friend." Old man Lee grasped her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. "Time-Minute is dead," he stated, his eyes searching hers. "Burned in his home 10 years ago with his entire household." "Not his entire household," Maya corrected quietly, the pain she'd suppressed for a decade bleeding into her voice. "I got out. Nobody else did." The elevator reached the garage level. The moment of revelation would have to wait as Maya guided them to a service vehicle, an unmarked van used for hotel deliveries. She hot-wired it with practiced ease while Sung-ho helped his father into the back. "You know who's trying to kill us?" Sung-ho asked as Maya pulled the van out of the garage through a service exit, avoiding the main drive where gunmen would certainly be waiting. "I have suspicions," she replied, navigating the New York streets with the confidence of someone who had planned escape routes as habitually as others planned their daily commute. "Share them," he commanded. Maya glanced in the rearview mirror, meeting Old Man Lee's gaze. "The attack pattern is identical to the one used on my family 10 years ago. Simultaneous entry points, sniper support, inside information about location and security. It's a signature." "Whose signature?" Old Man Lee demanded, though his expression suggested he already knew the answer. "Han Jin-woo," Maya replied, the name like poison on her tongue. "Your brother-in-law." The silence that followed was charged with decades of history that Maya had been too young to fully understand when she lived it, but had pieced together in the years since. How the Lee family had fractured when Old Man Lee chose Sung-ho, his son by his second wife, as heir over Han Jin-woo, who had married the old man's daughter. How Jin-woo had disappeared from Busan after a failed power grab, presumed dead by many. How months later, Time-Minute's compound had burned to the ground, killing Maya's foster family and everyone loyal to them. "Jin-woo is dead," Sung-ho stated flatly. "No," Maya contradicted, taking a sharp turn down a narrow side street. "He's in Manhattan. Has been for years, building his own organization, waiting for the right moment to finish what he started in Busan." "How could you possibly know that?" Sung-ho demanded. Maya met his eyes in the mirror again, letting him see the cold fury she'd carried for a decade. "Because I've been hunting him since the day he killed my family. If you're sitting there wondering how a hotel chef hunts a Korean crime lord while preparing bulgogi for Wall Street executives, you're not alone." Sung-ho's expression cycled through disbelief, anger, and reluctant fascination as Maya drove them to a safe house in Queens, a modest apartment above a Korean grocery store that no one would connect to the prestigious Lee family. "Why here?" Sung-ho questioned as they helped the old man up the narrow staircase, the sound of their footsteps masked by the bustling market below. "Because it's mine," Maya answered simply, unlocking 3 separate deadbolts. "And because it's the last place Jin-woo would look for you." The apartment revealed the duality of Maya's existence. At first glance, it was unremarkable. Modest furniture, minimal decoration, nothing that screamed wealth or excess. But a trained eye would notice the strategic positioning of every piece, the sightlines to all entry points, the reinforced door frames. And behind a sliding bookcase, which Maya revealed after ensuring the old man was comfortable on her sofa, was a room that Sung-ho could scarcely believe. Maps covered the walls. Surveillance photos. Timeline charts. Financial records. 10 years of meticulous intelligence gathering, all focused on a single target. Han Jin-woo and his growing American operation. "My God," Sung-ho breathed, taking in the scope of Maya's investigation. "You've been doing counterintelligence against a Korean crime syndicate while cooking bibimbap at a hotel?" "I've worked 17 different kitchen jobs in the past 10 years, Maya corrected, her voice detached. "Clinical. Hotels, restaurants, catering services. Anywhere Jin-woo's people might frequent. Invisible positions where no one looks at your face, where no one remembers you. Places where you can listen. All to find the man who killed your family," Sung-ho clarified, studying a particularly detailed map of business in Manhattan with red pins indicating Jin-woo's holdings. "All to finish what my father started," Maya corrected. Time-Minute wasn't just killed. He was betrayed. He was investigating Jin-woo's connection to human trafficking. Specifically the disappearance of young women from Busan's poorest neighborhoods. Girls no one would miss. Girls like I would have been if he hadn't found me first. Old Man Lee appeared in the doorway, his face ashen. "Time-Minute never brought this to me." "Because he didn't have proof yet," Maya replied, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "And because he didn't know how deep Jin-woo's influence in your organization went." The old man's eyes narrowed. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything," Maya stated flatly. "I'm telling you that Jin-woo has people inside your operation. Today's attack confirms it. They knew exactly where you'd be, exactly when. That kind of intelligence doesn't come from guesswork." Sung-ho's phone rang, shattering the tension. He answered it on speaker, a rapid-fire report in Korean from his head of security. 3 confirmed dead at the hotel. 4 of their own men injured. No sign of the shooters. And a disturbing detail. The hotel security cameras had been disabled exactly 7 minutes before the attack. From the inside. Using authorized access codes. Who had those codes? Maya asked as Sung-ho ended the call. Only our top-level security team, Sung-ho replied, his expression hardening. And Kim Minute-jae, your chief financial officer, Maya noted. She crossed the room to a filing cabinet, pulled out a folder, and handed it to Sung-ho. He's been laundering money for Jin-woo for at least 3 years. Sung-ho stared at the documents. Bank transfers. Property records. Shell companies. All meticulously compiled and annotated. How did you get these? Our own auditors haven't found any irregularities. Your auditors weren't raised by Park Tae-minute, Maya replied simply. And they haven't spent 10 years with a single purpose. Old man Lee sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 78 years. All this time, he murmured. Jin-woo alive. Tae-minute murdered not for loyalty to me, but for uncovering the truth. He looked up at Maya, his eyes filled with a grief so raw it transcended language barriers and cultural differences. And you, his daughter, fighting this war alone. Not alone anymore, Sung-ho stated, his decision made. He turned to Maya, really seeing her now. Not as a chef, not as an anomaly, but as a warrior who had carried forward her father's mission with no resources, no backup, no support beyond her own determination. Tell us what you know. Everything. And so Maya finally unveiled the full extent of her investigation. How Jin-woo had established a parallel organization in America. How he'd infiltrated the Lee's legitimate businesses. How he'd been siphoning funds and resources for years while positioning himself to eventually take over both criminal and legal operations. How he'd expanded beyond traditional Korean mafia activities into human trafficking, using the Lee shipping infrastructure without their knowledge. The attack today wasn't just an assassination attempt, Maya explained, pointing to a calendar on her wall where today's date was circled in red. It's the first move in a complete takeover. Right now, Jin-woo's people are accessing your accounts, transferring assets, taking control of your digital infrastructure. Minute-jae gave them the keys to the kingdom, Sung-ho said grimly. How can you be so certain of the timing? Sung-ho demanded. Maya hesitated, then revealed her final piece of intelligence. Because I've had access to Jin-woo's secure communications for the past 6 months. My position at the hotel wasn't an accident. I knew your father was coming to New York. I knew Jin-woo planned to eliminate you both during the visit. What I didn't know was that I'd literally run into old man Lee and blow my cover. The revelation that Maya had orchestrated her presence at this pivotal moment sent Sung-ho pacing the small room, his instinctive distrust warring with the undeniable evidence before him. If what you're saying is true, we need to move now, he said finally. Before they can complete the financial transfers. I already have, Maya replied, turning her laptop to show them a screen of code. I initiated countermeasures the moment we left the hotel. Your accounts are locked down. Emergency protocols are in place. Jin-woo can't touch your money. But neither can you. Not until we identify everyone involved in the conspiracy and clean house. Old man Lee stared at her, a slow smile spreading across his weathered face. You are truly Tae-minite's daughter, he said softly. He always said proper preparation prevents poor performance. The familiar saying, one Maya had heard countless times during her training, brought an unexpected sting of tears to her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. We don't have time for nostalgia, she said sharply. Jin-woo will realize his financial attack failed. He'll move to physical assets next. Your warehouses, distribution centers, front businesses. We need to secure them. Sung-ho nodded, already dialing his most trusted lieutenants. Give me locations. Priorities. As Maya outlined the most vulnerable targets and Sung-ho relayed orders, a new dynamic emerged between them. A partnership forged in crisis, built on the foundation of shared enemies and unexpected connections. The Black Chef and the Korean heir apparent, united by the ghosts of Busan. The next 48 hours were a blur of strategic counterattacks. From Maya's modest apartment, they orchestrated a defensive campaign that left Jin-woo's forces reeling. Sung-ho's men secured key properties. Loyal tech experts locked down digital assets. And most importantly, they identified the traitors within the Lee organization. Not just Minute-jae, but 7 other high-ranking members who had sold their loyalty to Jin-woo's promises of wealth and power. Throughout it all, Maya revealed skills that went far beyond what even Tae-minute could have taught her. Her understanding of digital security, financial systems, and tactical operations spoke of years of self-education, of turning herself into a weapon focused on a single target. "Where did you learn all this?" Sung-ho asked during a rare quiet moment, as they waited for confirmation that a particularly valuable warehouse had been secured. "Everywhere," Maya replied, not looking up from her laptop. "Community college courses. Online tutorials. Books. I worked as a night prep cook at a cybersecurity firm for 6 months just to eavesdrop on their analysts." She paused, her fingers stilling on the keyboard. "When revenge is all you have, you get creative." "Not revenge," Old Man Lee corrected from his position by the window where he'd been watching the street below with the vigilance of a man who'd survived decades in a brutal business. "Justice." Maya's hand stilled completely on the keyboard. "Is there a difference?" "Revenge burns everything, including the one seeking it," the old man said, turning to face her. "Justice builds something new from the ashes." The words hit Maya like a physical blow, exposing the hollow core of her decade-long mission. What had she been building? What life existed for her beyond this room of maps and surveillance photos? What identity did she have beyond the daughter of a murdered man? Before she could process this uncomfortable revelation, Sung-ho's phone rang again. The news sent them all into motion. Jin-woo himself had been spotted entering a private club in Manhattan, a neutral territory where he conducted his most sensitive business. "This is our chance," Sung-ho declared, checking his weapon. "We take him now. End this before it escalates further." "It's a trap," Maya countered immediately. "Jin-woo doesn't make public appearances during active operations. He's drawing you out. Or he's desperate because we've counted his every move," Sung-ho argued. "He's exposed and trying to retreat." "You're not thinking clearly," Maya insisted, stepping between Sung-ho and the door. "This is exactly how he lured my father out 10 years ago. A visible target. An opportunity too good to pass up." Old Man Lee raised his hand, silencing them both. "She's right, Sung-ho. It's too convenient." He turned to Maya. "But we cannot let this opportunity pass. What do you suggest?" In that moment, the final walls between them fell. The old crime boss was deferring to the judgment of a woman who 3 days earlier had been preparing his meal. The implicit trust in his question acknowledged what they all now understood. That Maya's decade of invisible warfare had prepared her for exactly this moment. "We let him think his trap worked," Maya said after a moment of consideration. "But we set our own." The plan they developed was elegant in its simplicity. Sung-ho would appear to take the bait, approaching the club with minimal security, exactly what Jin-woo would expect from an arrogant heir desperate to end the threat to his succession. Meanwhile, Maya and Old Man Lee's most loyal soldiers would infiltrate through service entrances and back alleys, positions familiar to someone who had spent years navigating the invisible pathways of service workers. "You're coming with us?" Sung-ho questioned as Maya changed from her chef's coat into tactical black, her movements sufficiently practiced. "Jin-woo killed my family," she replied simply. "I've waited 10 years to look him in the eye when justice finds him." Old Man Lee would remain at the safe house, protected by his most trusted guards. Though he protested, his physical limitations made him a liability in the field. He clasped Maya's hand before she left, pressing something into her palm. "Time in it would want you to have this," the old man said softly. Maya opened her hand to find a small jade pendant, identical to the one her foster father had always worn. A family heirloom she thought had been lost in the fire. "How did you?" she began. "He gave it to me the day before he died," Old Man Lee revealed, pain etching new lines in his weathered face. "He said he had discovered something that might change everything. That if anything happened to him, I should find his daughter and give her this." Maya stared at the pendant, then at the old man. "You knew I was alive all this time?" "No," he admitted heavily. "I thought you had died with the others. The bodies, they were unrecognizable. I counted you among the lost until you spoke to me in that hotel dining room. Then I began to hope." Maya closed her fingers around the jade, feeling its familiar weight and texture. A tangible connection to the man who had saved her, raised her, loved her as his own. She slipped the pendant around her neck, tucking it beneath her shirt, close to her heart. "Let's finish what he started," she said. The operation unfolded with mechanical precision. Sung-ho made his approach to the front of the club, drawing attention and security resources exactly as planned. Meanwhile, Maya led a small team through the kitchen entrance, her chef's coat and confident stride allowing her to walk past staff who automatically categorized her as belonging in their domain. The universal invisibility of service workers became her greatest weapon. They navigated to the VIP section where Jin-woo held court, timing their movements to coincide with Sung-ho's distraction at the front. Maya positioned her team with silent hand signals, then slipped into the private room alone, a serving tray held before her like a shield. And there he was. Han Jinwoo, older than in her memories, his hair now threaded with gray, but his eyes unchanged. Cold, calculating, utterly devoid of empathy. The man who had ordered the deaths of the only family she had ever truly known. The architect of a decade of nightmares. He was surrounded by bodyguards and sycophants, holding court like the king he aspired to be. But there was someone else in the room. Someone Maya had convinced herself was dead. Someone whose face she had mourned for 10 years. Her foster brother. Park Ji-hoon. Alive. Standing at Jinwoo's right hand like a trusted lieutenant. The tray nearly slipped from Maya's suddenly numb fingers. She caught it at the last second, muscle memory overriding shock, but her eyes remained locked on the face she thought she'd never see again. He was different. Harder. The soft-featured boy who had taught her to play Go and sneak extra banchan from their mother's kitchen had been replaced by a man with cold eyes and expensive suits. But it was him. Unmistakably him. Jinwoo glanced up as Maya entered, his gaze sliding over her dismissively. Just another black server. Invisible beneath notice. But Ji-hoon's eyes found her. And in that instant, she saw the flicker of recognition. The widening of pupils. The slight parting of lips. He knew. Maya placed drinks on the table with practiced grace, keeping her head bowed, listening as Jinwoo laughed about the pathetic security at Sung-ho's approach. The son is as arrogant as the father, Jinwoo declared in Korean. Walking into my trap like a child. By morning, the Lee Empire will be mine. As Maya turned to leave, Ji-hoon's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Her heart froze. Uncle, he said softly in Korean, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. This one. Let me handle the service tonight. Jinwoo waved a hand dismissively. Fine. Just don't let her interfere with business. Ji-hoon stood, still gripping Maya's wrist, and pulled her from the room into a service corridor. The moment the door closed behind them, he shoved her against the wall, his forearm across her throat. Hana, he whispered, the name like a curse. His perfect Busan dialect cutting deeper than any knife. You're supposed to be dead. Maya stared into the eyes of her foster brother, searching for the boy she remembered, finding only a stranger. So are you? She managed, her voice strangled. Ji-hoon's laugh was bitter. Dead would have been kinder. He released the pressure on her throat slightly, but didn't step back. Why are you here? Working for the Lees? I could ask you the same about Jinwoo, Maya countered, her mind racing. The brother she'd mourned. The family member she'd avenged. Standing before her, alive and working for the man who killed their family. It's not what you think, Ji-hoon said, but his eyes wouldn't meet hers. Then tell me, Maya demanded. Tell me how you survived. Tell me why you're with the man who murdered our parents. Tell me why I spent 10 years thinking you were dead. Ji-hoon's expression hardened. Our parents? He spat the words. Time in it wasn't your father. He was mine. You were just the charity case he brought home. The black orphan he paraded around like some proof of his progressive values. The words hit Maya like physical blows. That's not true. He loved me. He pitied you, Ji-hoon corrected cruelly. There's a difference. And his pity got him killed. If he'd focused on actual family business instead of playing savior to street trash and investigating things that weren't his concern, he'd still be alive. Maya's hand moved before she could think, slapping Ji-hoon hard across the face. The crack echoed in the narrow corridor. He could have let me die in that container, she said, her voice shaking with fury. But he didn't. He brought me home. He gave me his name. He trained me like he trained you. Exactly like he trained me, Ji-hoon replied, rubbing his cheek. Which is why I know you're here to kill Jinwoo. And I can't let you do that. Why? Maya demanded. He murdered our family. Burned our home. Killed our mother. He saved me, Ji-hoon said flatly. When that building was burning, when everyone else died, Jinwoo's men pulled me out. Gave me a choice. Die with the past or live with the future. So you chose to betray everything our father stood for, Maya said, the betrayal cutting deeper than she thought possible. I chose to survive, Ji-hoon corrected. Something you apparently also did. So don't lecture me about loyalty. The standoff might have continued if Sung-ho's voice hadn't crackled through Maya's hidden earpiece. Maya, we're in position. Confirm status. Ji-hoon's eyes narrowed, noting the slight shift in her expression. You brought them here. The Lees. To finish what our father started, Maya said. Jinwoo is going down tonight. With or without you. Not without me, Ji-hoon said, his hand moving to his concealed weapon. Because if you try to take him, I'll kill you myself. Maya stared at her foster brother, the last living connection to the family she'd lost, now standing between her and justice. Then I guess we both know how this ends, she said quietly. But before either could move, the distinctive sound of automatic weapons fire erupted from the main room. Sung-ho's diversion had turned into a firefight. Ji-hoon's head snapped toward the sound, his professional instincts overriding their personal confrontation. What did you do? What I had to, Maya replied, already moving back toward the private room. The scene inside was chaos. Sung-ho had breached from the front with more force than planned. Jin-woo's security detail was engaged in a fierce firefight. And in the center of it all, Jin-woo himself crouched behind an overturned table, shouting orders. Maya moved with fluid efficiency, disabling guards with the precision Time-Minute had drilled into her. She was vaguely aware of Ji-hoon entering behind her, but couldn't spare attention to track him. Not yet. She fought her way across the room toward Jin-woo, each movement calculated, each strike purposeful. This was what 10 years had built toward. This moment. But as she closed in on Jin-woo, Ji-hoon stepped between them, weapon raised. Move, Hana, he commanded in Korean. No, Maya replied in the same language, her own weapon trained on him now. Not this time. Not for him. Around them, the firefight was winding down. Sung-ho's forces had overwhelmed Jin-woo's security. But in this small space, brother faced sister over the man who had destroyed their family. You don't understand, Ji-hoon said, and for the first time, Maya heard something other than coldness in his voice. Desperation. Pain. I'm not protecting him. I'm protecting you. What? Jin-woo didn't just pull me from the fire, Ji-hoon continued rapidly. He told me who really ordered the hit on our family. Why they died. Jin-woo laughed from behind the overturned table. Shut up, boy. You're weak, just like your father. But Ji-hoon ignored him, his eyes locked on Maya's. It wasn't Jin-woo's order alone. He had help from inside. Someone in the Lee organization who wanted Time-Minute dead before he could expose the trafficking operation. Someone who's been using you, Hana. Using your revenge to eliminate his own rival. Maya's world tilted. You're lying. Trying to protect him. Am I? Ji-hoon reached into his jacket slowly, pulling out a folder. I've spent 10 years gathering proof. Real proof. Not just of Jin-woo's crimes, but of who really ordered our father's death. He threw the folder to her. Maya caught it one-handed, her weapon never wavering, and flipped it open. What she saw made her blood run cold. Financial transactions. Communications. Authorizations. All pointing to a conspiracy that went deeper than she'd imagined. Jin-woo had been involved, yes. But the order had come from higher up. From someone who had trusted her investigation. Someone who had used her decade of intelligence gathering to eliminate his own enemies while keeping his hands clean. The documents implicated Kim Minute-jae, yes. But they also implicated someone else. Old Man Lee. No, Maya whispered. It's not possible. Think, Hana, Ji-hoon urged. Why did Jin-woo's attack on the Lees fail so easily? Why was Old Man Lee so quick to trust you? Why did he have our father's pendant all this time? Because Time-Minute gave it to him, Maya said, but her voice lacked conviction. Or because he took it after ordering the hit, Ji-hoon countered. A trophy. Insurance. Something to eventually manipulate the daughter with if she ever surfaced. This is insane, Maya said, but her hands were shaking now. You're trying to save Jin-woo by implicating everyone. I'm trying to save you, Ji-hoon shouted. From becoming the weapon that the man who killed our father uses to eliminate his last rival. Jin-woo stood slowly, raising his hands in surrender. The boy speaks truth, for once in his miserable life. Old Man Lee wanted your father dead. I was simply the tool he used. And now he's using you to eliminate me and consolidate his power completely. You're both liars, Maya said, but the certainty was draining from her voice. Sung-ho entered the room then, weapon drawn, taking in the scene. His eyes moved from Maya to Ji-hoon to Jin-woo. What's happening here? Maya turned to him, the folder still in her hand. Did you know? That your father was involved in my family's death? Sung-ho's expression was carefully neutral. I know my father has made difficult choices to protect our family and our business. I know he trusted Time-Minute completely. And I know that when Time-Minute died, something in my father broke. That's not an answer, Maya said. It's the only one I have, Sung-ho replied. But I also know this. Whatever happened 10 years ago, whatever secrets are buried in that fire, Jin-woo is still a trafficker. Still a killer. Still someone who needs to face justice. Justice, Maya repeated, the word old man Lee had used. Not revenge. She looked at Ji-hoon, at the brother she'd thought dead. At Jin-woo, the man she'd hunted for a decade. At Sung-ho, who represented a family as complicated and morally gray as her own. And she made her choice. Lower your weapon, Ji-hoon, she said quietly. Hana, he protested. Lower it, she repeated. This doesn't end with more death. Not tonight. Ji-hoon hesitated, then slowly complied. Maya kept her own weapon trained on Jin-woo as she pulled out her phone. Who are you calling? Sung-ho demanded. The FBI, Maya replied. All the evidence I've gathered on Jin-woo's trafficking operation. It's going to them. Along with this folder and whatever else Ji-hoon has collected. You're sending my father to prison, Sung-ho stated. I'm sending everyone responsible to prison, Maya corrected. Including Jin-woo. Including anyone in your organization who was involved. And yes, if the evidence implicates your father, then him too. She met Sung-ho's eyes directly. That's what justice looks like. Not revenge dressed up in prettier words. Actual consequences for actual crimes. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of approaching sirens. Maya had triggered something before entering the club, insurance in case everything went wrong. The authorities were coming. Sung-ho lowered his weapon slowly. My father will never forgive this. I know, Maya said. But I think mine would be proud. In the aftermath, as the FBI swarmed the club and began making arrests, Maya stood with Ji-hoon in the cold night air. Two siblings reunited by tragedy, divided by choices, now facing an uncertain future. I meant what I said, Ji-hoon told her quietly. I was trying to protect you. I know, Maya replied. And I meant what I said. About justice. She turned to face him fully. What will you do now? Ji-hoon shrugged, looking more like the boy she remembered for just a moment. Testify. Cooperate. Try to find some version of redemption that doesn't feel like a complete lie. He paused. You? Maya touched the jade pendant beneath her shirt. I don't know. For 10 years, I've been a weapon. A tool for revenge. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not that. You're my sister, Ji-hoon said simply. Taemin's daughter. That hasn't changed, even if everything else has. Maya felt tears sting her eyes for the first time in a decade. I thought you were dead. I mourned you. I was dead, Ji-hoon replied. In all the ways that mattered. Maybe we both were. Maybe we can figure out how to be alive again. In the weeks that followed, the full scope of the conspiracy unraveled. Jin-woo's trafficking network was dismantled. Several members of the Lee organization were indicted. And old man Lee himself faced charges, though the evidence of his direct involvement in Taemin's death remained frustratingly circumstantial. Sung-ho took control of what remained of the legitimate Lee businesses, publicly distancing himself from his father's alleged crimes while privately wrestling with questions that had no easy answers. And Maya? She testified. She turned over every piece of evidence she'd gathered. She watched as the empire built on blood and suffering began to crumble. But she also started cooking again. Not in secret. Not as camouflage. But because she loved it. Because Taemin's wife had taught her with patience and love. Because food was the language she'd first learned in that Busan apartment that had been the only real home she'd ever known. Ji-hoon would visit her new restaurant sometimes. They'd sit in awkward silence, two people learning how to be family again. Learning how to carry the weight of what they'd survived and what they'd done. Sung-ho came once, unannounced, sitting at the bar while Maya prepared banchan with the same precision she'd shown that first night in the hotel. You could have destroyed my entire family, he said quietly. I destroyed the parts that deserved it, Maya replied. The rest is up to you. He nodded slowly. For what it's worth, you were right. About justice. About all of it. Maya set a plate before him, traditional Busan-style dishes prepared exactly as she'd been taught. Eat, she said in Korean. Honor is found in how we move forward, not just in avenging the past. It was something Taemin used to say. Something she was finally beginning to understand. So here we are, at the end that's really just another beginning. The black chef who spoke Korean and exposed a crime family. The orphan who found her brother and faced impossible choices. The woman who existed between worlds and learned that justice was more complicated than revenge. If you've been paying attention, you've learned what Maya learned. That family isn't always blood. That the truth is rarely simple. And that sometimes the hardest choice is the right one, even when it costs you everything. Maya Chen, Park Hana, showed a room full of powerful men that they'd been looking right through her, missing the most dangerous person in their midst because they couldn't see past her skin or her uniform. Their mistake. Their loss. Her truth. If this story moved you, if it made you think about justice and family and the choices we make, then subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in Maya's place. Because these stories, these conversations about right and wrong and the messy space in between, that's what we're all about here. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that being overlooked doesn't mean being powerless. That the invisible can become invincible. That your voice matters, even when the world tries to silence it. Because trust me, there are more Mayas out there. More warriors in aprons and uniforms. More people fighting battles no one sees. And their stories deserve to be told.